Hello to everyone, and this is Enric KU. In this video we shall address the most searched questions on Google related to personal protective equipment PPEs. Don't worry. Here I am to provide you right and short answers. Q1. What is personal protective equipment? Personal protective equipment, PPE, refers to any equipment or clothing worn by an individual to minimize their exposure to workplace hazards. It is designed to protect the user from physical, electrical, mechanical, and chemical hazards that can cause injuries or illnesses. Q2. How many types of PPEs? There are several types of PPE, including eye and face protection, head protection, foot protection, hand protection, hearing protection, respiratory protection, and body protection. Each type of PPE is designed to protect a specific body part from a particular hazard. Q3. How can appropriate PPE be selected for a job? 1. The first step in selecting appropriate PPE for a job is to identify the hazards in the workplace. 2. When determining the appropriate PPE for a job, factors such as the level of risk and specific job tasks should be considered. 3. PPE options should be evaluated based on their effectiveness in protecting against identified hazards, as well as factors such as comfort and ease of use. 4. Important considerations when providing PPE to employees include proper fitting, maintenance, and training on use and care. 5. Regular monitoring and review of the effectiveness of a PPE program is important to ensure ongoing protection of employees. 6. Alternatives to using PPE to control workplace hazards include engineering or administrative controls. 7. Not providing adequate PPE to employees can lead to serious injuries or illnesses and may result in fines or legal action against the employer. Q4. What are the mandatory PPE and the corresponding ANSI standards? Mandatory PPE refers to the personal protective equipment that must be worn to protect employees from hazards that cannot be eliminated through engineering or administrative controls. Here are some common examples. (1) Hard hats, ANSI Z89.1. Hard hats are mandatory in areas where there is a risk of head injury from falling objects, electrical shock, or bumping into fixed objects. (2) Eye and face protection, ANSI Z87.1. Eye and face protection is mandatory in areas where there is a risk of eye or face injury from flying debris, chemicals, or radiation. (3) Hearing protection, ANSI S3.19. Hearing protection is mandatory in areas where there is a risk of hearing loss due to exposure to excessive noise levels. Here are some more mandatory personal protective equipment examples. 4. Respiratory protection, ANSI Z88.2. Respiratory protection is mandatory in areas where there is a risk of inhalation of harmful substances, such as dust, fumes, or chemicals. 5. Foot protection, ANSI Z41. Foot protection is mandatory in areas where there is a risk of foot injury from falling objects, electrical shock, or sharp objects. The ANSI standards provide guidance on the design, performance, and testing of PPE to ensure that it is effective in protecting employees. Employers must ensure that employees are provided with the appropriate mandatory PPE, that it is properly fitted and maintained, and that employees receive training on its use and care. Q5. What are the OSHA requirements for PPE? OSHA has specific requirements for PPE in the workplace. Employers are required to assess workplace hazards and provide appropriate PPE to protect employees from those hazards. The following OSHA standards are relevant to PPE. General Industry Standard, 29 CFR 1910.132. This standard requires employers to provide PPE to employees and ensure its use when hazards are present. Construction Standard, 29 CFR 1926.95. This standard requires employers to provide and ensure the use of PPE in construction work, including eye and face protection, head protection, hearing protection, foot protection, and respiratory protection. Respiratory Protection Standard, 29 CFR 1910.134. This standard requires employers to establish a written respiratory protection program and provide appropriate respiratory protection to employees when respirator use is required. Hazard Communication Standard, 29 CFR 1910.1200. This standard requires employers to provide information to employees about hazardous chemicals in the workplace and to ensure that employees use PPE when handling those chemicals. Employers must also ensure that PPE is properly maintained, stored, and replaced as necessary, and that employees are trained on the proper use and care of PPE. I hope you enjoyed the video. You can ask more questions related to OHS field or suggest topics for next videos. One request to all: kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel The Innercan for more exciting videos.